Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee. I'm Reverend Dina McFeeters, and I'm honored to serve as your Associate Minister and to welcome you to this online worship service. We welcome people of all genders, sexualities, ages, races, ethnicities, histories, and bodies. We welcome your mind, your heart, and your spirit. We welcome all that you're bringing with you and all that your heart longs to set down. During the COVID-19 public health emergency, all First Church in-person activities have been postponed or moved online. We offer all ages religious education every Sunday at 10 a.m. and youth group at 1 p.m. online. You can find the link in your chat or the RE weekly updates. Please sign up for those religious education updates to find out more about family ministry and religious education for children and youth. Join us for a virtual coffee hour this morning after the service, where we chat in small groups on video conference. You can find the Zoom meeting link in the live stream chat or the Friday announcements. Visitors and members are encouraged to connect. Just bring your own coffee. Our Sunday forum has returned, so you can look forward to that at 10 a.m. on Sundays. And you can join me this Thursday to connect and reflect at 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. on Zoom, and you can find that link in your announcements. And also join Reverend Jennifer for lunch with the senior minister on Monday between 12 and 12:30 p.m. on our First Church Facebook group. She will be on Facebook Live. So be sure to join our First Church Facebook group where we share encouragement, videos, and ways to connect. We are still accepting summer service proposals and applications to become a worship associate. Both are powerful ways to share stories and compelling messages to nourish our spirits, engage our minds, and inspire action. So please do send those in. You can find the link to apply in your e-news and on our website. As you're aware, COVID-19 sadly is hitting Milwaukee's Black community very hard. You can help our reparations partner program, the Parks Milwaukee, in getting food and supplies to the most vulnerable. We're invited to make cash payments to help with the purchase of food and supplies, and the link will be in your live stream chat and is also in the e-news. We thank you in advance for your patience as we all learn how to stay connected in virtual spaces. Our online worship service this morning moves between live stream and some pre-recorded music and elements that provide touchstones from our sanctuary. Once again, I welcome you to our worship service by inviting you to repeat our First Church mission after me. We gather to nurture the spirit, engage the mind, and inspire action. These opening words are by Sarah Eileen Lawal. Out of the flames of fear, we rise with courage of our deepest convictions to stand for justice, inclusion, and peace. Out of the flames of scrutiny, we rise to proclaim our faith with hope to heal a fractured and hurting world. Out of the flames of doubt, we rise to embrace the mystery, wonder, and awe of all there is and all that is yet to be. Out of the flames of hate, We rise with the force of love, love that celebrates our shared humanity. Out of the flames, we rise. Let's watch Reverend Jennifer light our flaming chalice, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism.
Good morning. My name is Kimberly Tomczyk Carlson, and I am the Director of Religious Education. The story I have for you today is from the Bible. Now, there are many, many stories in the Bible which contains sections, books, and chapters. So when you tell a story from the Bible, it is a tradition to say where in the Bible you can find the story. This story is from the New Testament section in a book called Luke, chapter 19. It is one of the many stories about Jesus. There once was a man named Zacchaeus who lived in the town of Jericho. Zacchaeus was a short man who worked as the chief tax collector in his town. A tax collector collects money from people. The tax money that is collected is supposed to help provide things that the town needs, like roads and schools and protection. But sometimes some of the money that is collected also goes to the tax collector, and in this case, to the emperor. This job of tax collector paid very well and made Zacchaeus rich, but it also made him very unpopular in the town of Jericho. As you might imagine, people do not like giving up their money, and they often felt that taxes and Zacchaeus was unfair. Now, Zacchaeus had heard amazing stories about Jesus and very much wanted to see him. When he heard that Jesus was entering the town of Jericho, where he lived, he got very excited. He decided to follow the crowd of people so he too could hear and see Jesus. Zacchaeus had a problem, though. Did you remember that he was a short man? When he was in the crowd of people, he could only see the backs of people and he could not see Jesus. Zacchaeus was just too short to see over all of the people. Has that ever happened to you? It can be quite frustrating. Now, Zacchaeus, he was short in stature, but he was smart too. So he decided that he would go ahead of the crowd and climb a tree. He ran ahead, he found a sycamore tree, and he climbed up high above the crowd so he could see Jesus. Then something surprising happened. Jesus was walking down the path toward the tree that Zacchaeus was in, and he looked up. Jesus saw Zacchaeus, and rather than scold him for being an unfair tax collector, he saw a man who wanted to do and be better. Jesus then called out to Zacchaeus. He said something like, "Hey there, Zach, I heard you wanted to meet me. Can I come to your house for dinner?" Now, Zacchaeus was amazed, and he quickly climbed down the tree to meet Jesus. The crowd of people, though, they were shocked, and they started to complain and grumble about Jesus going to the house of someone they disliked, someone they thought of as unfair and unkind. But Jesus did not listen to the crowd. He wanted to give Zacchaeus a chance. Now, Zacchaeus had been listening to Jesus' message about being loving and kind to your neighbors. Zacchaeus wanted to be a better person, and he knew he had to do something to show Jesus and the people that he was sincere in wanting to change. So Zacchaeus stood there and he said, "Look, half my things, I will give them to the poor. And if I have unfairly taken anyone of anything, I will pay back 4 times as much." Jesus knew then that Zacchaeus understood his message of love and kindness. Jesus told Zacchaeus that he had been lost, but now he believes Zacchaeus had found his way to becoming a good person. The end. Thanks for listening to our story today. Reverend Dina will now lead you in a guided meditation.
Friends, we have a candle of life this morning. I am very sorry to tell you that one of our church members has died from cancer. Alice May Gillum died peacefully at home early Friday morning, April 10th, after a week surrounded by the adoration and care of her daughters and her husband. She died with her husband Chuck by her side. Alice and her family traveled the cancer journey. I think it was a little over a year, over this past year, since she was diagnosed with a rare neuroendocrine cancer. Alice was 75 years old and a member of our church for 7 years. A memorial service will be held at a later time. As is our custom in this church, whenever there is a birth, an adoption, or a death among our members, we light our candle of life. Today, in honor of Alice May Gillum. Now, because I'm not in our sanctuary right now, I don't have our beautiful candle of life. But what I do have is this pillar candle. Can you see that? So what I will do is just set this down and get the match so I can light the candle in honor of Alice. And then I'll set this candle carefully over here, this handmade ceramic saucer, right over here. Oh, there we go. There, so the flame will be safe. As we enter into a time of spoken meditation, followed by shared silence, followed by singing Spirit of Life, I'd invite you to find a way wherever you are to center and ground yourself. Perhaps you can put your feet on the floor, maybe find a way to lift your spine so you can breathe deeply. And allow your hands to come to a resting place. This spoken meditation is called Blessing in the Chaos by Jan Richardson. To all that is chaotic in you, let there come silence. Let there be a calming of the clamoring, a stilling of the voices that have laid their claim on you, that go with you even to the holy places, but will not let you rest. Let what distracts you cease. Let what divides you cease. Let there come an end to what diminishes and demeans, and let depart all that keeps you in its cage. Let there be an opening into the quiet that lies beneath the chaos, where you find the peace you did not think possible, and see what shimmers within the storm. Let's watch Reverend Jennifer ring the singing bowl, and then we'll dwell together in shared silence.
Good morning. My name is Paul Geenan, and I will be your worship associate today. On this Easter Sunday, I remember other Easter Sundays and reflect on one community that has supported me for my entire adult life. In August of 1956, at the age of 14, I joined the freshman class at Sacred Heart Minor Seminary in Oneida, Wisconsin. Holy Week is considered the most important of all the events in the Roman Catholic liturgical calendar. It is a time of moving from darkness to light. On Maundy Thursday, priests wash the feet of their parishioners to mirror the respect Jesus showed to his disciples. At the Sem, we gathered in nervous lines in the chapel to have our headmaster, Monsignor Greasy, wash our feet. Monsignor was the ultimate disciplinarian in our lives, God's master sergeant, and the arbiter of our future. It was strangely terrifying to participate in his act of intentional humility. On Good Friday, in our darkened chapel, we joined in a somber ceremony of moving the monstrance, a gold container holding the consecrated bread, to the side chapel. This signified that Christ was in the tomb. Afterwards, we processed through the grounds in our customary dark suits, 2 by 2, reciting the rosary, while a faculty member called out a sacred mystery before each decade of the rosary. Holy Saturday was a day of anticipation, spent in personal reflection, walking solo in the woods to reflect on nature's springtime rejuvenation. We look forward to the evening's special meal of baked ham, complete with a bottle of sparkling water on each table. Easter Sunday was glorious, with the Schola Cantorum leading us in celebratory psalms, and our full choir singing a cappella the beautiful Gregorian chant hymns that we had been practicing for weeks. 2 priests from the faculty, led by Monsignor, all enrobed in gold vestments, moved around the altar in choreographed sweeping movements, celebrating Christ's resurrection. The annual observation of Holy Week and Easter was one of the rituals that became part of our collective memory and identity, even as our individual paths changed. As the years went on, each of us in the 1956 freshman class followed our own unique path. Several fought in Vietnam. Others became social workers, teachers. Some entered the world of business and law. Only 8 of the original 73 were ordained as priests. Still, we continue to be a community, gathering at breakfasts, reunions, and funerals, and now Zoom, bound together by the experiences and friendships we shared 64 years ago. Last year, I got a call from Larry, one of my closest seminary friends. He explained that he didn't have his usual sense of humor. He told me that he was seriously ill. He did not have the energy to talk long, and we ended our conversations exchanging the words, "I love you." Just a few weeks later, a group of us met at a restaurant in Oshkosh for lunch before Larry's memorial. We talked about old memories of our seminary days and how our lives had changed in ways we could not have predicted. Today, the COVID-19 pandemic is changing our lives in profound ways. Each of us is confronting challenges we never could have imagined. For me, these challenges include concerns about underlying health issues with family members, the financial impact of the economic downturn, and the impact of social distancing on my ability to support my brother as he approaches the end of his life. I look to our First Church community for encouragement in these uncertain times. Our lives here at First Church, just as my life and those of my classmates, have changed. Change is a given, but the bonds formed in a beloved community can be the support we need to weather life's changes.
Thank you, Nick and Elizabeth Hayes. Thank you for the music. Anyone who is grieving a loss and is suddenly expected to be cheerful knows the painful sensation of incongruity, the affront of being asked to put on a face for others. I believe we are all in that space this Easter morning, a space of incongruity. We are living during an extensive period of loss and grief, an unholy week, the longest Good Friday most of us have ever known. And here it is, Easter morning. How can we be expected to rejoice during a pandemic? Easter's Alleluia beckons us, but we are still dressed in sackcloth and ashes. On Friday, our country suffered the highest number of deaths in one day since the novel coronavirus pandemic began. 2,057 people died from COVID-19 in the United States just on Friday. On Saturday, the death toll in the United States surpassed that of Italy. At least 20,608 people have died from COVID-19 in the United States. And the survivors who mourn the loss of those unique and beloved individuals are likely separated from their loved ones by physical distance, struggling to comfort one another without touch. And what of Passover? Jewish people who celebrate Passover are accustomed to gathering for the Seder dinner in large groups of family and friends. But this year, so much is different. Judaic educator Jody Hirsch created an update to the traditional 4 questions recited at the Passover Seder. She wrote, "Traditionally, we ask, how is this night different from all other nights? The question then answers itself 4 times. This year, we ask ourselves how this Pesach, Hebrew for Passover, is different from all that have come before. Why is this Pesach different than all other Pesachs? On all other Pesachs, we gather together with family and friends. On this Pesach, many of us sit alone or in couples. On all other Pesachs, we share the Seder with grandparents. On this Pesach, many of our grandparents are isolated. On all other Pesachs, we invite others into our homes, or we are invited to other homes. On this Pesach, there are no invitations. On all other Pesachs, we tell of our ancestors sheltering in their homes as the last of the 10 plagues passes over them. This Pesach, we ourselves are sheltered in our homes." As you may recall, Passover celebrates the story of the Hebrew people's liberation from oppression when they labored as slaves in ancient Egypt. God helped the Hebrew people escape by inflicting 10 plagues on the Egyptians before Pharaoh would let Moses' people go. The last of the plagues was the death of the Egyptian firstborn. The Hebrew people were instructed to mark the doorposts of their homes with the blood of a slaughtered spring lamb. And upon seeing this, the Spirit of the Lord knew to pass over those homes. What is different this year than all other years? Throughout the world, we are all praying that the angel of death pass over our homes and let us and our loved ones live. It's a challenge to look for liberation from oppression these days, as Jewish people do during Passover. It's a challenge to rejoice in Easter. I'm not sure that we can be expected to rejoice this morning. I certainly don't expect you to. But Easter is about looking for life amidst death. And surely that search is what saves our sanity and redeems our fear during this time of pandemic. The Cathedral of St. John the Divine in Manhattan became a field hospital this week, able to house up to 200 coronavirus patients. The cathedral's crypt will be used as a staging area for the medical professionals working in the church. Life found in a tomb. At Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, just days before the first anniversary of the April 15th fire that ravaged the building, Archbishop Aupetit, 3 clergymen, and a violinist celebrated Good Friday service. Venerating a crown of thorns that survived the flames, the bishop said that the 40 minutes of prayer, music, and readings under the blackened remains of the vaulted stone ceiling showed that life is still here. One of my Christian friends posted on Facebook last month after the shelter-in-place orders happened. This is the lentiest Lent I have ever lented. Yes, there is so much that we all suddenly gave up. Much of it not by choice and not as a way to walk a spiritual path. And yet, this is the path that we are on, a path of sacrifice. Sacrifice for the greater good in order to save lives. Sacrifice. There are so many different levels of sacrifice going on. And there are stark contrasts between them. There is a stark contrast between those who are watching cooking shows at home to discover how to combine ingredients from their pantry, to those who wait for school lunches at distribution sites just in order to feed their children. There's a stark contrast between those who are bored with time on their hands and those who have never worked so hard in their lives. There's a stark contrast between those happy to be spending more quality time together as a family and those who are trapped at home with an abusive spouse, partner, or parent. There's a stark contrast between those who are voluntarily cutting back unnecessary spending and those who suddenly don't have a paycheck. And those who are on the front lines of this war against an invisible enemy, who are risking their health and their lives to serve and save others, are giving the most humbling sacrifice of all. Yet, from the heroes to the children, every one of us has made some sacrifice, is experiencing some losses. And every one of us has a role to play. As our worship associate said in his story today, the Christian Holy Week is a journey through darkness into light. We forget sometimes that we can't get to the light without journeying through the darkness. There was an interview with Kate Bowler, religion scholar and best-selling author in the New York Times on April 6th, called How to Live in the Face of Fear, Lessons from a Cancer Survivor. She said, There was a rhythm I got into with cancer that has served me well right now. Every day sort of has an arc to it. There's a limited amount that you're going to be able to face as you stare into the abyss. Being able over the course of the day to track your own resources will help you know how to spend them. The idea that we're all supposed to be positive all the time has become an American obsession. It gives us momentum and purpose to feel like the best is yet to come. But the problem is when it becomes a kind of poison in which it expects that people who are suffering, which is pretty much everyone right now, are somehow always supposed to find the silver lining or not speak realistically about their circumstances. The main problem is that it adds shame to suffering by just requiring everyone to be prescriptively joyful. The trick is to find meaning without being taught a lesson. A pandemic is not a judgment, and it will not discriminate between the deserving and the undeserving. I do hope, she concludes, that every person, religious or not, feels the permission to say, I'm at the edge of what I know right now. And in the face of the sea of abyss, someone out there, please show me love. Because that's the only thing that fills up the darkness. In Jan Richardson's little book called Garden of Hollows, Entering the Mysteries of Lent and Easter, she wrote this. On the night that Jesus and his disciples make their visit to the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus exhorts them to stay with him as he prays. But soon he finds them asleep, repeatedly. In Matthew and Mark, he wakes them 3 times. Luke's gospel, in a gracious move that mentions their slumber only once, states that the disciples sleep because of grief. The disciples' slumber suggests they weren't fully aware of what was going on in the garden, or that they couldn't face it. Strikes close to home this desire to insulate ourselves from what we do not want to face. It's no wonder the disciples sleep. It is hard work sometimes to remain present to the demands of resurrection. Something in us knows that to stay awake will mean traveling through the terrain of grief as well as joy. The possibility of transformed lives asks something of us. It propels us into a landscape beyond what is familiar to us. It challenges us to allow life into the hollows of the grave spaces within us. There is grief in this sometimes, and the desire to go numb may be strong. But even in our weariness, in our numbness, in our most resistant and dead places, there is something that remains wakeful, open, alert. My friends, we have walked through the valley of the shadow of death before, many times, too many times. We have accompanied one another through that long, lonesome valley. We know its ways, its fear and sadness, its anguish and impatience. We also know that we eventually do emerge into the light. We emerge, perhaps not singing, perhaps not shouting, Alleluia, but we emerge grateful to be alive. There is a connection between lament and liberation, between grief and joy. Jesus' story didn't end on the day he died, and ours don't either. Our story goes on as long as there is someone to tell it. Many years ago, I traveled to the Iona community in Scotland and learned this short song from the Wild Goose worship group. I commend it to your heart and your soul. Let's see. This is how it goes. Don't be afraid. My love is stronger. My love is stronger than your fear. Don't be afraid. My love is stronger, and I have promised to be always near. I have promised to be always near. One of the Christian mystics wrote that great love brings great suffering. That phrase speaks to me this season. Everything we love will eventually bring suffering because we will lose it. And yet, even in death, there is life. Search for it, my friends. While you search, may your love be stronger than your fear. May the love that is larger than all of us be near this day and all days to come. May you have a... These closing words are called Liberation is Costly by Archbishop Emeritus of Cape Town, South Africa, Desmond Tutu. Liberation is costly. Even after the Lord had delivered the Israelites from Egypt, they had to travel through the desert. They had to bear the responsibilities and difficulties of freedom. There was starvation and thirst, and they kept complaining. They complained that their diet was monotonous. Many of them preferred the days of bondage and the flesh pots of Egypt. We must remember that liberation is costly. It needs unity. We must hold hands and refuse to be divided. We must be ready. Some of us will not see the day of our liberation physically. Those people will have contributed to the struggle. Let us be united. Let us be filled with hope. Let us be those who respect one another. May it be so. Let's watch Reverend Jennifer extinguish the flaming chalice until we are together again next week.